If you're looking for a step-by-step guide to wholesaling real estate, this video is for you because I'll be going over what wholesaling is and the steps you need to take to get started. Let's get into it. Now, the first step that you need to take to get started wholesaling real estate is finding motivated sellers. You can find motivated sellers in any city of your choice, in any small town of your choice. But another thing that you got to verify is that buyers are actually buying in the area. So I normally recommend people to start in their own city, but sometimes if you're in like a area where there's not a lot of growth and there's not buyers in the area, such as a small town where I'm from, sometimes you have to go outside of that area and go into areas that you can find house flippers, that you can find your cash buyers or your landlords that'll be willing to pick up properties in that area because they know that it's going to be a continuous growth in the area for the years to come. So you must identify that first before you can find motivated sellers. Now, if you do want to go virtually, there's nothing wrong with that. But you would just have to identify a city such as Atlanta, Georgia, or maybe Miami, or one of those cities, and you can find homeowners in the surrounding areas outside of that city, and those can be the cities that you can get started in. So like just say Atlanta, you can get started in Decatur, Georgia. You can get started in those areas because it may be less competition, not necessarily, but it may give you a better opportunity to get your first deal quicker, and you can spend less money to get your first deal, just depending on if anyone else has picked up on going right outside of major cities. Now, after you identify what city or state that you want to go in, if you decide not to go local, it's time to pull a distress list. If you're a one-person operation and you work in a 9 to 5 and you need a list to call and text, and you're the only person doing it, you definitely need to focus on distressed properties. Focus on distressed homeowners. And when I say that, I'm talking about your pre-foreclosures. I'm talking about your tax delinquent list. I'm talking about your vacant properties. Those are the type of lists that you want to go after. Even tired landlords, which will be an eviction list. Those are the type of homeowners you want to go after, because in the beginning, you need to focus on going deeper than going wider and pulling larger lists. Because if you can focus on a niche list, you know that there's a level of motivation. But if you decide that you wanted to go wider and pull a high equity list, it's going to take you longer to generate leads, which will take you longer to generate deals because you're the only person working in your business. Now, on side of pulling lists in PropStream, another option that you have is driving for dollars. I recommend driving for dollars if you want to build your own list. If you want to build a list of properties that may have high grass, or they may have a covering over the roof, let you know that there's some type of roof damage, or properties that may look like it's vacant. Those are the type of properties that you want to add to your list. You can also add absentee owner properties to your driving for dollars list as well. But the key properties that you really want to pay attention to whenever you're driving for dollars are the properties that you see that is currently vacant, but when you go inside an app such as PropStream, it's not registered as a vacant property. Those are sellers that a lot of wholesalers and other investors are not reaching out to, because most of them are just pulling lists and skip tracing and reaching out to the sellers that are shown as vacant inside of these softwares. So those are sellers that you can separate and make sure that you get in contact with, because no one else is really talking to them unless you have somebody else that's out driving for dollars. You can also go up to your local courthouse, which will be free, and pull courthouse data such as pre-foreclosures, eviction lists. Those type of lists you can pull directly from the courthouse, and they're going to be most up to date because it's coming directly from the courthouse. These systems such as PropStream may be a little bit outdated. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not completely outdated, but they may not have some records that you find at the courthouse inside of PropStream, which is going to put you ahead of everybody else if they're not going up to the courthouse pulling data. So definitely make sure you add pulling courthouse records to something that you could potentially do in your business to find motivated sellers. So basically, that's the first step in the wholesaling process. And now let's get into the next step. So the next step is hitting the like button, subscribe, and clicking the notification bell, because I'm trying to continue to grow this channel to help out as much people as I possibly can. And if you don't mind, just watch the video all the way through, because that's going to show positive signals to YouTube and allow them to push this content out to more people. Now, before we even get to the next step, the list that you created in the first step, you have to skip trace it and get phone numbers. And from that point, you're creating a list of prospects, because you're gonna have 3, 4 to 5 phone numbers, and you don't know if those are the correct phone numbers or not. So your goal is to convert these prospects into leads. In the process of doing that, you have to identify that you're talking to the correct seller. Also, there's like 5 or 6 common responses that you may get whenever you're reaching out to these prospects. And so that's why I said in this steps, you're gonna be putting prospects in the correct category. The type of responses that you may get is, no, I'm not interested, wrong person, the property is sold, don't ever call me again, yes, what's your offer? The yes, what's your offer is what you're looking for, and that is what you call a seller lead. The not interested is also what you call a not interested lead, so it's a seller lead as well too. They're just currently not interested, and you don't want to throw those particular sellers away, because circumstances and situations change all the time. So with the not interested people, I normally put them into a campaign to follow up with them once every 6 months. This step is very important, because you don't want to keep reaching out to the wrong phone number or somebody that told you that the property is sold, because one thing you're doing, you're wasting money and you're wasting time reaching out to these people that already told you that they're not interested in selling, or they already sold the property. Now, the next step in the process is pretty simple. If you have a seller that responds and say that they are interested in selling, you got to start the process of collecting the necessary information that's needed for you to make an educated offer. So with that being said, you need to mainly focus on the property condition. You need to ask them, when was the last time the roof was replaced? When the last time the HVAC was updated? Have they done any updates in the past 3 to 6 years? How is the plumbing? How is the electrical? How is the foundation on the property? Because that's going to help you determine whether you're dealing with a cosmetic type of repair, a medium repair, or a full gut job, which will be heavy repairs. You have to ask some questions like, when are they looking to move? Because that's going to tell you how motivated they are and what category you need to put the lead in. So if you have sellers saying, hey, I need to sell in the next 2 weeks, or I need to sell immediately, those are hot leads. Those are sellers that you need to stay in front of over the next couple of days or next month or so. Or you may have a situation where the seller say, I need to sell in the next 30 to 60 days. I consider those as medium leads. Or you may have a seller that say, I need to sell in 90 plus days. Those are cold leads. And you remember I told you, you have not interested leads as well too, that I will reach out to every 6 months. And that's just how the conversation should really go if you're dealing with a seller that says, what's your offer? Now, the next step in the wholesaling process is for you to make your offer. Always remember, the person that gives the number first most of the time loses. So you need to try to get the number out of the seller as much as you possibly can. But most of the time, whenever I see sellers are playing that game and they don't want to give me a number first, I'm not going to give them my actual starting number. I go even lower than my starting offer number, and then I work my way up to my max allowable offer if I need to. Because in a situation like that, like I said, the first person that gives that number is at a disadvantage. So if the seller doesn't accept your offer, that doesn't mean that you just put that lead in the trash. The key to getting consistent wholesale deals is having follow-up systems in place. You remember earlier when I said something about the cold leads, hot leads, or warm leads? You need to have systems in place, especially if it's mobile numbers, to where you can automate the process of following up with these sellers over the next year, over the next couple of months, over the next couple of weeks. You need to have automation in place, because guess what? A lot of wholesalers are just calling prospects, turning them into leads, but not following up. 70 to 80% of your deals are gonna come for follow-up. So having this follow-up system in place is very, very important. Now, the next step is the most exciting part of the process. If you get the seller to accept your offer, you need to get your A-B agreement over to the seller so they can sign. And if you don't understand what the A and the B stand for, the A stands for the seller and the B stands for you as the wholesaler that is putting the property under contract. And what I recommend, whenever you send this agreement over to the seller, read it line by line with the seller so there won't be any confusion after it's signed, because they need to understand and know every part of the agreement. I have a very detailed agreement that may be somewhat confusing, so I make sure I elaborate on everything I need to elaborate on before I get a signature from the seller. Now, after you get it signed, the next step is to send the paperwork over to your real estate attorney or your title company. You can easily find real estate attorney and title companies in your state by just asking other wholesalers in the area what real estate attorney do they use or what title company do they use in the area. And most of the time, they shouldn't have no problem with giving that, because that shouldn't really be a secret anyway. But just asking around to see what attorney or title company actually perform wholesale transactions. What you'll need to do next is find cash buyers for the deal. My recommendation is to use PropStream. You can use PropStream to build a buyers list. You can use PropStream to find hedge fund buyers. You can go up to the local courthouse and attend foreclosure auctions, and you can meet cash buyers there. Or you can either look at the documents in the courthouse and see who is currently bidding on these foreclosure properties and build cash buyers that way. But once you build that list, if you know that you have the property contracted right, the best thing to do is host an open house at the property. Especially if the property is vacant, it's a whole lot easier for you to do that because you can get all your buyers in at one time. You can give them a set time to get their offers in, and then whoever has the highest offer, they have 24 hours to get their non-refundable deposit in to the attorney office or title company that you're using. And please make sure whichever buyer that you choose, make sure they put that non-refundable deposit down, because then you know that you're dealing with serious buyers and they can't just drag you out because they have $2,500 or $5,000 tied up in the closing process already. So make sure you collect that. But hosting that open house would definitely bring buyers out if it's a deal and they're interested, and the highest bidder would take the property. Step 9, which is the best part of the process, setting the closing date and closing the transaction. Once you close the transaction, you can either get your money wired to you or you can get a check. So my first deal, I didn't get wired to me. I actually got it in check form because I just wanted to hold a check in my hand. Also, if you're looking for tools to add to your wholesaling business that may help speed up the process of closing your first deal or managing the leads that you have, please feel free to check out my video here, and I'll see you next time.